everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Successful Mind podcast, where David and I discuss what's going on in the world as it pertains to our thinking, our team's thinking, and our ideal clients' thinking. All really important things to be aware of. Give it a listen and let us know what you think.
You're listening to the Successful Mind podcast.
Successful people learn how to make their minds work for them.
We are Life is Now, and this is the Successful Mind podcast.
Steph, what do you think of this recession that's going on?
Well, according to the media, it's kind of gotten a little quiet.
It's gotten a little quiet.
A couple weeks ago, it was gloom and doom, and, the bottom's going to drop out and housing prices are going to go down, and, we're going to have a change in currency and, all the fear tactics that we've heard for a while. And now it's gotten a little quiet. It's been focused on other things.
Yes. And we know when they do that, they're manipulating,
right?
They don't want you to think about it because they're focused on something else.
Right. So what I do is I don't necessarily listen to what's going on in the media. I look at what's going on in the circles that I kind of hang out in. Yeah,
and you were telling me today you have some pretty interesting information about some stuff that's going on. You want to share that?
Sure. So I'm in a couple of groups with high-end business owners, people that are way smarter than I am, with businesses that are bigger than ours. And the topic of conversation was like, is anyone seeing any change? Is anyone seeing any change in buying patterns or habits? And several of the business owners have seen some pretty massive changes. And so they're looking at retooling some of the programs that they're offering, looking at repricing some things, looking at how they're pricing some things to get things moving in the right direction. And, this isn't the first recession that you and I have been in, and it's not the first recession that most of the people listening to this podcast have been in. So we've kind of seen these patterns before.
Yeah.
It's not that people don't have money. Money doesn't just disappear. It doesn't, because there's a recession, money just doesn't go poof. And
no.
It just slows in circulation because people are holding on to it because there's uncertainty.
In fact, I checked this today just to double check my facts. There's been 14 recessions since the Great Depression, and many more behind. I think they started tracking this in the early 1700s, but since the Great Depression, there's been 14 recessions since then.
14?
14. Yeah, and you can look it up. Anybody who wants to look it up, just put in the amount of recessions since the Great Depression. It'll come up in Wikipedia. It'll tell you the dates it started, it stopped, what the conditions were around it. It's all there because it's part of an economic cycle, and most people never learn that's an actual reality.
Right, and I think that's a huge benefit to people who are paying attention, is that A, you can realize that it's a cycle. It's nothing to be afraid of. But B, it does impact your buyer's decision making.
Absolutely.
Just because it's a cycle, just because we know that nothing horrible is going to happen. It's just a way for the economy to reset itself.
Right.
Excuse me. That's great for us. It helps us control anxiety, but we also have to understand how what the media puts out affects. And not just what the media puts out, but increasing inflation.
Yes.
How that affects our buyers' psychology.
Yes.
Because if you don't adjust to that, you're going to experience the recession in a pretty unfortunate way.
Yeah. Well, here's some interesting things that I've been looking at. Number one, if there's a recession due to inflation of some kind, there's too much money in the marketplace. And in order for them to bring that down, they have to have job loss. So the goal right now, according to when they were discussing this with Congress, is they need about 2 million jobs to go away, which means people out of work, in order to bring the amount of spending and the influx of cash in the marketplace down to a level where they say that they can then drop interest rates again. Although I have seen this so many times that the fact is that it's just consistent manipulation across the board, and what it affects are the business owners that are ignorant to what's going on and they don't know how their market has changed, and people that have a fixed income where their dollars can't stretch far enough in order to be able to meet their needs. So I just wanted to throw that in there as some factual knowledge about how this actually works.
Yeah. I mean, wouldn't you say this is, and I'm not an economist by any stretch of the imagination, right? But wouldn't you say that the two groups of people that are affected most by a recession are people on a fixed income and people who sell things to people on a fixed income?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So it's the small businesses that sell things to people on a fixed income,
right,
that feel it the worst. And we're seeing that with, one of the people in my group runs a real estate coaching firm, very, very, very large, successful real estate coaching firm. And he's seeing a drop off because there's a lot of talk of, and people equate this recession to the last recession, which they're totally different recessions.
right.
The housing market crisis happened for an entirely different reason that we're in the situation that we're in right now, right?
Yeah,
so
we're in a post-COVID transition.
Yeah. And before it was a whole bunch of lending.
Yeah. Well, you had, absolutely. You had so if you just go back to 2000, you've got all the issues around 9/11, and then you've got the war and the ups and downs of that. And then that that goes into the COVID thing. And then, now we're trying to pull out of that. So it's constant up and down.
Yeah. And, so they're seeing people drop out of their mentorship program. They're seeing a lack of sales because they're all realtors. And it's not that there's less money and houses have stopped selling. It's that the people that are in the program are protecting their money because there's uncertainty. So they're more hesitant to buy. There's more buyer hesitancy right now because of the uncertainty. So one of the things that they've done is they've actually gone to weekly payments. So that the initial, the amounts of money are smaller for them, even though it's the same amount total. It causes them to feel a little bit more secure because they can hold on to their money a little bit longer and they can gradually pay for their program over weeks rather than this larger chunk over a month.
Yeah.
Now, had they not been paying attention and just experienced this big drop off and not made any changes, they'd be in a very tough spot right now. But with the institution of the weekly payments, they've increased their business again. So they've established buyer safety within their program by doing that. And I think that's just one way that people are looking at how can we do things differently because of the recession that we're going to. Also, consulting companies are going to private lenders so that people don't have to use money in their savings account to pay for things. They can actually get a loan for the programs and the services that they're looking for,
right,
so that they can make money on those programs and services by implementing them and then pay back the loan while also keeping the money that they have in the bank there, quote unquote, just in case.
Yeah, that is actually a recommendation that I was reading about in Forbes as one of the strategies to be able to move through the economic cycle, and also to watch your spending, right, and preserve cash. Yeah.
I've heard people refer to it as their war chest, like going through recession, preserve your war chest.
Preserve your war chest.
But I think that it's a competing energy, right? You've got one energy that's kind of scarcity mindset, kind of protective, and then the other mindset where we've seen people grow exponentially during a recession with their business because they're not in that duck and cover mode.
That's right.
They're refusing to duck and cover. In fact, recession is a great time to build a business, especially if you can solve specific problems for people.
Yeah. Well, one of the first times that the public became aware that there were actually more millionaires made during the Great Depression than any other time before that, two very interesting things occurred. One was the stories that were created that were absolutely not true with the idea that, these people took advantage of the lesser and that type of thing, which actually is a common belief amongst a lot of people that just don't understand what business is. Mm-hmm. And that's also because of manipulation of the media and various people that have a different kind of agenda. But if a person has a legitimate business, they're actually bringing value to the marketplace. right? So if they're bringing value to the marketplace, it's actually going to help someone in whether it's product or service in whatever way, and people are spending money on that, it's because they recognize the value. It's not that somebody's taking the money from them, but as that story became more well known, business owners started waking up to the idea that, hey, this actually, instead of just being fear-minded, because that's constantly what the media is producing or pushing out there, is fear, is that, wait a minute, if I'm actually thinking about this, this is actually going to create opportunities to provide more service if I'm a thinking person. And if I train myself to start looking for opportunities in the marketplace itself.
Well, we experienced this firsthand. So when COVID hit and we, got this crazy shelter in place order, I know you and I sat on Zoom in silence for a good 45 minutes, like, okay, so
now what?
This is happening. Thinking through all the things like, well, if our clients don't get paid, then we don't get paid. And how can we make sure and protect our employees? And, and then finally we just sat back and said, what do people need right now? People are scared.
Yep.
And we met a need. We were one of the first people to create a program to help them navigate that uncertainty, because no one had a pre-programmed response for how to deal with what we were experiencing in terms of COVID and shelter in place and basically being locked down in our homes for an extended period of time.
We'd never experienced
2 weeks to flatten the curve, right? Like, remember that propaganda? Yeah.
Yes, I remember.
And then from that, we created a brand new program where we got on Zoom, we got business owners together to help them see the opportunities that were right in front of them to grow their business.
Yeah.
And we helped, we must have done 15 or 20 of those virtual sessions, with groups of like 7 to 10 people, and helped every single one of them see how they could actually make money and grow working from home.
Right.
With opportunity that they didn't even know existed, because they were so afraid because of how they'd always been doing things couldn't be done anymore.
And it's interesting because everybody thinks, well, you can't do that with my business. And we had somebody that had holiday balloons, remember?
Yes.
And they started rocking it, right?
Yes.
It just took some brainstorming as to how can we actually fulfill this need during this time. I still get emails from them.
Yes. And we had attorneys that, court was shut down. They had to figure out another way to make money. So
that's
helped them create a side business to help them make money based on their expertise. And now that business has been built to, multiple 7 figures. Yeah. So it just goes to show that when you can see a problem and you can provide a solution, you can help people, and you can also take care of yourself. I mean, we didn't have to lay off a single person. Actually, 2020 was our best year in business. We helped more people than we'd ever helped. And we really flourished during that whole crisis. And I think that that's possible with what we're headed into, in the next, couple of years with what's going on with the economy in the country right now.
Yeah. And, the initial phase of what we were doing was, let's just put this out there for free and help people with their mindset.
Yeah.
Teach them how to think about this so that they realize that they have another way to think regardless of what everybody else is fear-mongering about, to help them open up and give some direction to their thought process.
All right.
Hey, David Nagel here. I have a question for you. Are you a business owner that's been wondering if you're about to be hit by the recession? Are you unable to shake the feeling that a recession could really derail any progress you or your business has made over the course of the past few years? It can be tough to keep your mindset in the right place, especially in a world loaded with uncertainty. I'm here to tell you that there's no need to wait for the other shoe to drop. It's time to make the rest of the year the best of the year. And here's where I come in. My mission has always been to bring expanded awareness and higher consciousness to as many people as possible. I have an incredible gift for finding better ways of helping leaders like you make a huge impact in not only your own life, but in the lives of clients that you work with. That is why I've decided to host a free 4-part series called How to Win Big During a Recession. During this free 4-part series, I plan to cover how to control your thinking, inspire your team, and dominate your market, no matter what the market may be. This will allow you to face any changes the recession may bring head on proactively instead of reactively. Make plans to join me June 12th through June 15th and take the steps to recession-proof your mindset and win big in the months and years ahead. For more information on how you can be part of this free 4-part series, go to lifeisnowinc.com/win. Again, that's lifeisnowinc.com/win. Take control of your business and make the informed decision to join me on this free 4-part series. The knowledge that you'll gain will allow you to emerge stronger amidst any economic downturns. Go to lifeisnowinc.com/win and register today. It's time to control your thinking, inspire your team, and dominate your market. I'll see you there. And now, back to the show.
Oh, everyone was terrified.
It was horrible. It was a horrible experience for everybody in the world, really. I mean, it was
awful. And
everybody led with fear. It was, remember they had the death charts up every day. Yes. And it was so bad.
You could log in to see how many people had died in your county.
Yes.
Yeah. It was nuts. It was so scary.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to look back at this in 20 years from now to see how ridiculous most of this was. But anyway.
But the idea behind this is that when you're faced with some kind of challenge, let's say, you have a choice. You can either see the problem or you can see the solution.
Right.
But really, it's your choice. If you focus on the problem, all you'll see is problems. And if you focus on the solution, you'll see opportunity, right?
Yeah, because you can't have a problem without a solution being there.
Talk about that.
Well, it's the law of polarity. Nothing in the universe exists without its opposite existing at the same time and in the same place. They're actually connected. So when you have a problem, the opposite side of a problem is a solution. If you're raised that is where you're primarily focused on problems because everybody's scaring you about, oh, you've got to be safe and you have to do all these different things to make it through life because all these terrible things can happen to you, and nobody actually teaches you how to look at problem solving, realizing that there's another opportunity in as far as the way that you think and how you behave. Most people go through life with ignorant from that. Like if I just focus on the fear. But when I learned it and I was able to help people with it, it was dramatic in the results because it's not just a nice thing to hear or some kind of a metaphorical idea. It's actual reality. If you have a problem, the solution is here. It's in the exact same place. So the idea is that our mind is programmed to receive whatever our senses are focused on, right? So if I choose, because I now know that I have an option because I have this knowledge, if I choose to focus my senses on and my thinking on what the solution is, I will find it because it's there. I will become aware of that solution. If I'm only focused on the negative, I will become more and more aware that that's there. And the truth is they're both there at the same time because everything has an opposite side to it. So really, it's kind of like that whole idea of life is both heaven and hell, but what your experience of it is based on what you choose, yes. And with that kind of understanding and responsibility, there's no problem that you can't solve.
There's no hopelessness.
There's no hopelessness. There's no hopelessness.
Yeah. I think that's a super key point, and there's this great diagram that I showed in one of our trainings that I learned from an incredible man by the name of Simon Bowen, who teaches in models. He's really, really brilliant when it comes to models. And he created this model where he showed there are 3 different ways for you to respond to what's going on in the world. And he did it kind of in a chart graph thing, right? And he's got one line and that line goes down. It's just down. These are the people that react in fear and they just freeze. They just freeze. Then there's another group where on the line of progression for the future, they go a little above the line, a little below the line, a little above the line, a little below the line. They just want to maintain through whatever the crisis is. They just want to stay afloat. So they
Yeah.
kind of duck and cover a little bit, right? They'll do just enough. And they'll just kind of toe that line of just keeping their head above water. And then there's the third group, and they innovate. They're focused on the solution. They implement strategies. They try new things. They use this as an opportunity to do something really great. And those are the people that come out of a crisis on top. And the only difference between the people that come out on top and the people that come out on bottom is leadership. It's all in how you think about what's going on,
Yeah.
how you lead your people to think about what's going on.
Yep.
Because there are really three things that are impacted by a recession: your thinking, your team's thinking, and your buyer's thinking.
Right.
And if any one of those three are off, then you're not going to see the level of success that you want in your business. They all have to be, you have to have an understanding of what your thinking is and stay mindful. You have to have an understanding of what your team's thinking is, because if they're afraid and they have doubts, they're going to react that way, and it's going to show in their results. And if your buyer's thinking is off and you don't adjust to it, you can't make money, because
Exactly.
without buyers, there's no sales.
There's no sales, no income, no revenue, no profit. There's nothing there.
Right.
And what's also interesting about this is from the buyer's perspective, is that there is also a value proposition in how those individuals see the world, right? So you have people that are primarily focused and so this is generally fixed income folks. Their main concern in life is to get as much as they possibly can with as little as they have.
Mm-hmm.
Because they are not aware yet that they have the ability to earn more, and they're not in any kind of a vehicle that they can actually earn more. So when the value of the dollar fluctuates, or inflation shows up, or recession shows up, or there's a limited amount of things, or cost of goods increases, these people are highly affected by that, and they tighten the purse strings even more, because they still need to get their needs met. They still got to buy toilet paper and milk and bread, and, they have to put gas in their car. They still have to get the basic needs. So the way that they view their life, there's even more fear, there's more trepidation, there's more worry. Their mind is constantly focused on, how can I make this work with the little bit that I have? They'll purchase cheaper things instead of better things, that type of an idea. And then you have a different set of people that their mind is more focused on the value that they get of the thing that they purchased, whether it's a product or a service. They also either earn more or have the ability to adjust their income based on their own will and expertise and skill set for what it is that they do. And it's not that they wouldn't it wouldn't take a deal if they got a deal, but value for value, they're actually looking for the result of whatever the product or service is going to bring them in the very best way that they can do it. So if you're a business owner and you're looking at who is my customer, understanding which value they're purchasing from makes a big difference in actually being able to do what you were just talking about. Like, if I have the wrong marketplace, it's very difficult for me to innovate if it's going to cost them more money, right?
Yes.
So you were talking about some of the people that are actually decreasing the frequency in which they can pay in order to make it more psychologically easy for them to step into that decision to be able to do it.
Well, increasing the frequency, decreasing the amount.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So talk a little bit about not so much about the amount, but the frequency. What is it that it's allowing somebody to do psychologically to step in and say yes?
Just because it's a lower amount upfront.
And it's
just a lower amount. And
what about the term of the contract? Is that shorter? Is that
no?
So they know that they're signing
weekly rather than monthly?
Okay.
Because weekly, it's a quarter of the amount that it would be monthly.
Yeah.
So
it's an easier decision.
It's an easier decision. And I'm actually kind of like trying to pay attention to the non-consulting coaching workspace to see how other people and larger businesses are doing this. So I'm seeing things like, buy a new car and don't make any payments for 3 months. Right? So they're getting people to buy cars by not making them make a payment for 3 months. Whereas, a year and a half ago, we weren't seeing that.
That's right.
Or lease this apartment and your, first 2 months are are free. It gets them into the apartment. It fills the apartment. They still pay the same amount of money, but it's delayed. So that people feel like they can hang on to that money a little bit longer. So I'm kind of watching, like, outside of our industry, how people are adjusting to I guess it's called buyer hesitancy. It's what I kind of think of in my mind is like this buyer hesitancy, to see how they're kind of navigating that. And those are two areas that I'm seeing, like, wow, buy a car and don't pay, for 3 months, you don't have a payment. That's pretty enticing to get someone to sign their name on a contract that then locks them into to buy a car.
Yeah. What can you do? What can you do to get this client to say yes, to move into that buying process? Back in 2009, we did it when they shut credit cards, when they started limiting credit on the credit cards. They were basically cutting everybody's credit card in half. One of the things that I learned back then that I was not really aware of was how many people use their credit card for the psychology of, this is emergency money if something was to actually go wrong.
It's almost
right?
like their savings account.
Yep.
Yeah.
And if you could come in, say half of what their credit limit was, they would then start buying again. So we watched them stop buying. And then when we found out what the problem is, we created something at a lower price that allowed them to step in and say yes easier. And everybody started buying again. And again, that year we went higher than we had ever gone before. So here you have a problem that's showing up. You come in, you meet the problem, you solve the problem for the people, and your income rises.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, it's so important to understand your buyer's psychology. And the only way you can do that is if you ask questions.
Yes.
Right? Like, so many people in a sales conversation shy away from the money conversation, right? They'll hear, oh, I can't afford that, or, oh, it's too much, but they don't ask questions about what that means, right? Like leaning in and saying, well, tell me about that. Is that you can't afford this? Or you can't afford anything right now.
Right.
Or tell me about that. What are you comparing this to? Or tell me about that. Like how could I help you figure out how to pay for this, so that you can actually understand what the real objection is, so that you can change what you're doing to overcome that objection before it becomes an objection.
Exactly.
But a lot of business owners just stop at the, oh, I can't.
Yeah, we see that all the time.
This.
We were just talking to somebody that was having that issue. They didn't have people converting, and they didn't know why, and they were trying to figure out some way to do it. And they were like, "Why don't you just ask them?
Ask them.
They'll tell you.
Just ask them. Like, why? Yep. It's always interesting to me because in my sales conversations, I'm always really clear on why, like what their why is, why we're having this conversation, why us, why now, like what's going to happen if they don't get the help that they need, so that when they say no, I can go back and say, well, hold on a second, help me understand this. Because we just went through this whole conversation and it was clear to both of us that this could really be of service to you and add ROI. Like it's clearly defined. Why? Help me understand why you would say no. And then the real reason comes out. And you can't overcome an excuse.
No. Because
an excuse is not based in any kind of truth, right? Like
whether the problem is real or imagined, it's still in their mind.
Right. Right. So you have to uncover what the real objection is so that you can understand how your buyer's mind is changing as things change in the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I just want, I want everybody to really think about the situation they're in, because every time we have something that's seemingly bad, there's a good side to it, and there's a solution to it, and there's an opportunity to it. But you do have to train your mind to think in that direction to do it. And like you said, it comes back to leadership. So if you're the leader listening to this is something that you can learn to do. It's something that you can teach your team to do. It's something you could teach your family to do. And you lift everybody up at the same time by doing it, and you keep the money coming in.
100%.
Awesome, Steph. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Hey everyone, David Nagel. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Successful Mind Podcast. And if you know somebody that is in fear, doubt, worry, or maybe even hopelessness around the recession or money being tight, send them this podcast. Let them listen to it. It'll change their spirit. It'll give them some real skills to be able to go out and change the results in their life. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Successful Mind podcast. If you like what you've heard and you want to know more, go to lifeisnowinc.com.